The keto diet is a very low carb, high fat diet. It often gets confused with the Atkins diet. So a lot of people just think that keto is just a low carb method. Well, it's different. The Atkins diet is a low carb method that has high protein and moderate fat. Whereas the keto diet is very low carb, very high fat, and then low to moderate protein. So my macros when I was doing the ketogenic diet were something like 30 grams of carbs, 100 to 120 grams of protein, and then like 220 grams of fat. Whereas if I was going to do something like the Atkins diet, where I'm just eating lower carb, I might do something like 100 grams of carbs, maybe 180 grams of protein, and 80 grams of fat, for example. The goal of the ketogenic diet is to put your body into a state called ketosis. And ketosis is essentially when your body is using ketones, which are byproducts of the mobilization of fats, in order to produce the body's energy. So our body's default is to use glucose for energy. Glucose is just sugars. So our body uses glucose to do pretty much everything, anywhere between 2/3 and maybe like 75% of everything that our body does is fueled by glucose. However, when we go into a state called ketosis, we then switch to fats being our primary fuel source. The reason that your protein needs to stay relatively low when you're eating the ketogenic diet is in order to actually get into ketosis. Not only do you have to have low carbohydrate intake in order to deplete your body of glucose and glycogen, but if your protein intake is too high, your body will go through a process called gluconeogenesis, which essentially is just a fancy term to say that it takes a substrate that's not glucose, in this case it would be protein, and transforms it into glucose. So if your protein intake is too high, your body will still be using glucose as its main source of energy. It'll just be doing it really inefficiently by using protein instead of glucose. So that's why it's not enough to just eat very low carbs and still keep your protein at a regular amount that a bodybuilder might eat. So I'm 200 pounds and I typically shoot for 160 to 180 grams of protein. Well, if I ate that while trying to get into a state of ketosis, I would never get there. Why do people try the ketogenic diet if our primary default fuel source is glucose? Well, the ketogenic diet does have some enticing research to go along with it, especially in regards to health outcomes. Just to name a few of the health outcomes that have been associated with eating a ketogenic diet, it's really good for people who are at risk of diabetes. So even pre-diabetics and diabetics, it's been shown to improve their glucose profiles in their bloodstreams. It's also been shown to surprisingly improve blood lipid profiles. So essentially how much fat is in your bloodstream at any given point. Even though you're eating high amounts of fat, it's actually been shown to improve it. It also surprisingly has been shown to improve your cholesterol levels. So typically the good cholesterol increases, the bad cholesterol decreases, and then your overall cholesterol will stay relatively the same. A lot of people also self-report enhanced energy, more consistent energy throughout the day, and then also better focus. So if you've eaten a really big carbohydrate meal before, you notice that you kind of crash, and then you get the energy from those carbs, and then you crash, and you kind of wave in energy throughout the day. However, people who use a ketogenic diet have said that they have sustained energy levels from start to finish. And I will say that from the 2 months that I followed a keto diet, I did feel like I had much better focus, and I also had a much better energy level throughout the day. I never really had peaks in my energy per se, but I did kind of have this steady stream of decent energy. One reason I really don't like the ketogenic diet is that it is marketed as a rapid fat loss tool. So people say that you can lose crazy amounts of weight in a very short amount of time. And you will lose a crazy amount of weight. but the weight that you lose is mostly water weight. So in those first few days of the keto diet, you'll be losing all the glucose and all of the glycogen from your body because your body is literally going into starvation because you're not giving it the necessary glucose to have it do its normal functions. And when glycogen is stored in our body, it's also stored with grams of water. And so when that glycogen is used, that water is expelled from the body. So your total body water significantly decreases when you're on a keto diet. And as a result, it's not uncommon to see you lose 10 pounds in the first couple of weeks, maybe even the first week. I lost something like 15 pounds in those 2 months, but I lost 10 to 12 pounds of that in the first 3 or 4 weeks. How does the ketogenic diet actually work for fat loss? It works the same as any other diet. The ketogenic diet, when in a caloric deficit, helps you lose fat because you're in a caloric deficit. So if you are consuming fewer calories than you are intaking, you will lose fat in due time. And that's how any diet works, including the ketogenic diet. So do I recommend the ketogenic diet? I would recommend it for health outcomes for certain individuals, especially very overweight individuals. I think they can benefit from it. However, the ketogenic diet is just not sustainable. I did it for a couple of months, and even though I actually felt great doing it, I just knew that I couldn't sustain it long term. And because I couldn't sustain it, I just gave up on it. It just wasn't worth it to me to continue to try to do it, eating the same foods every day, being so restricted. It just is not a sustainable lifestyle. And when it comes to diet, you want a sustainable diet. You don't want it to actually be a diet per se. It's just a lifestyle that you know how to modify in order to meet your goals. So if you have a flexible approach, I believe that you could just modify that flexible approach by changing the amount of calories and as a result changing the macros, and you're really open to eat whatever food choice that you want. And in doing so and making those modifications, you'll be able to gain weight or lose weight, build muscle, lose fat. You'll be able to do all of those things while having an open and flexible approach to your diet. The ketogenic diet is just way too restrictive. It's not sustainable, and for that reason, I wouldn't recommend it.